Good afternoon, our European friends, and good morning, our American friends. We are live again, a company called SAMexpert. We provide various services around Microsoft licensing, Microsoft Cloud, Microsoft Cost Management. And today we're here with another monthly update. What's happening, not even what's happened, what's happening and what will happen soon in the world of Microsoft Cloud, Microsoft licensing. And we'll discuss today also the Microsoft financial results. And with me today, I have my business partner, Daryl Ullman. And midway through the presentation, we expect our cloud head, Stefan Denk, to join us and talk about Azure cost management features just introduced by Microsoft. And here's the agenda. Here is the agenda. I will present you what's new in the Microsoft licensing. Then we'll pass the microphone to Stefan Denk, who will talk about the Azure Cost Management things. And Daryl will finalize today's event with the topic subject of Microsoft financial year results and how it affects us. Is it something we need to pay attention to? And I believe we do need to pay attention to what's going on in the Microsoft's world, share prices, results, but bear with us. That'll be the third part of today's event. At any time during the event, this is a Q&A session. We like talking, and as much as we like talking, we even more like answering your questions. So if you have any question, whether you're watching us on LinkedIn or on YouTube right now, say hello. Send your questions at any time during the live. Don't wait until the end, and we will be answering them as they are, as we receive them. And without further ado, let's move on to Microsoft's news. And I will repeat it for the third time this year. This is a boring month from the point of view of the changes in licensing of products. There's almost nothing is happening. There's, in these 5 items here, there's nothing that will affect your budget anyhow drastically. So Microsoft is still releasing any serious updates to its licensing programs. Normally, they happen around October and April. Sometimes they happen mid-year, like last year with Copilot. There were a few changes during the year. But as you can see, that's all what's going on. But we need to start paying attention to what Microsoft is about to release. And one of the major releases that we are expecting around October / November 2025 is Windows Server. Windows Server 2025. And there are a few changes to its licensing model. Importantly, Microsoft promised, as many expected, that Microsoft will completely switch to a subscription model. Microsoft promised to keep perpetual licenses. Everything you see on this slide, everything you hear from us today is not yet fully confirmed until it's in product terms somewhere around October, November. It's not yet official. But this is a consensus amongst Microsoft partners and licensing experts. An interesting thing that Microsoft brings for Windows Server is a consumption model. So we have a slide to look at what potential cost will be. What does it mean? It means that you will have an option to run Windows Server virtual machines, even physical machines, if they're connected to Azure Arc. So I expect that we expect that this will require software assurance. Sorry, let me take this back. I went on a tangent. No, it will be a pure pay-as-you-go model, like you pay in Azure, but on premises, in your data centers. And potentially, we expect it to be allowed on hosting as well. Not sure about that, but SQL Server with Azure Arc on a consumption model is allowed on hosting. So we expect that to be allowed on hosting too. Let's wait until it's released to be absolutely sure. As for the editions, there is no more Essential Edition. 2019 was the last version for Windows Server Essentials. Microsoft seems like dropped it completely. So we are only promised Data Center and Standard editions in the next release of Windows Server 2025. It brings a lot of new features in regards to containers, virtualization, security. They will drop old security protocols like in TLM. But today's event is not about the technical capabilities. Let's talk purely about costs and licensing. And one of the exciting things that Microsoft promised is to finally bring hot patching to on-premises Windows Server. It's already available in the Azure edition, in the Azure itself, but it's not yet available for Windows Server 2022 on-premises. So it will be, and there's no consensus around how this will be licensed. The worst-case assumption for now is it will certainly require software assurance, so it won't work on pure perpetual licenses, and it might be an add-on license. So to get hot patching, you would have to effectively pay for Windows Server, pay for software assurance, or get Windows Server on a subscription, and maybe also pay for hot patching as an additional fee. So these are the expectations around Windows Server 2025. How much it may be when it's released, when that feature when the pay-as-you-go feature is available. What we did here is, this is not also official, but some of our clients are asking for their planning, how much could this cost when this feature is released? What we did is we looked at the SQL Server with Azure Arc prices, and we noticed that the pay-as-you-go prices are roughly 20% more expensive per year than annual subscription licenses. And we did exactly the same estimation based on the available CSP price list for Windows Server Data Center, Windows Server Standard subscriptions. The reason why we're comparing subscriptions here, because it's to compare like to like. We're not comparing perpetual licenses. We're not comparing perpetual licenses with software assurance. We're comparing pure subscription licenses with pure pay-as-you-go subscription fees on hourly and monthly basis. And the differences that I repeat myself, the difference that we are applying here is the same difference that Microsoft has on SQL Server subscription licenses versus SQL Server pay-as-you-go through Azure Arc. What else do we know about Windows Server 2025? There will be no client access licenses per hour because there's no practical reason. Client access licenses are client access licenses. They're assigned to devices. They're assigned to users. And one of the things which Microsoft religiously sticks to with Windows Server is they require Windows Server client access licenses. So you not only have to license the servers themselves, you only need to license each client connecting to Windows Server. The thing is, it used to be very simple before Microsoft 365. With Microsoft 365, that is almost ubiquitous. Windows Server cows are effectively included in the top tier Microsoft 365 subscriptions. And if we look at our client base and see how many other users not covered with bundled cows, require standalone cows, that percentage is very low. So we're not Microsoft. We can't argue about commercial reason to continue charging for Windows Server cows, but they're not required in Azure. They're not required on hosting, including AWS, Google, any platform. When you rent a Windows Server virtual machine from those platforms, cows are not required. They're not required on CSP hosters. The only two cases when cows are required is on-premise and when you bring your own license to a service provider that allows you to bring your own license for Windows Server. These are the only two cases, and they're very rare. So that percentage is low of cases. So we hardly believe that's going to happen. However, we'll see. We'll see about that. And another thing that I really would like to see in the new release, in the new version, is the ability to use Windows Server Windows Server standard licenses with Windows Server Data Center virtual machines. It's not a well-known fact, but if you have CSP subscription licenses, you are allowed to run Windows Server Data Center virtual machines and license them per virtual machine with Windows Server standard licenses. For some reason, it wasn't given to enterprise agreement clients, which is a bigger and richer and the traditional client base of Microsoft. But there we go. In Windows Server 2022, you can do that with CSP licenses, but you're not allowed. You must match the addition of the license to the addition of the virtual machine if it's not a CSP license, including enterprise agreement. So hopefully, Microsoft will change that. These are the expectations. And there are more products coming. Office 2024 LTC has been confirmed multiple times. So Microsoft will continue providing traditional Office, the non-365 Office, at least for one version, which will be Office 2024, maybe Office 2025. There's no clarity around the version again. And for some bizarre reason, there's no clarity about SQL Server 2025. You would expect it to be released. There is virtually nothing. There's virtually no information. But I would still consider that it may be released, maybe even this year. And let's move on to the Azure Cost Management news, because as I said, on the licensing front, there's not much exciting happening. But Microsoft just rolled out a few Azure Cost Management features, and Stefan Denk here, our head of cloud, is to talk about that.
Thank you, Sasha. So the news in Azure Cost Management are the release of the FinOps Open Consumption and User Specification for Azure. This is a big one, which should have a quite significant impact on all the FinOpsers out there who are trying to work their way through the Azure costs. What it does is it is from the FinOps Foundation, which is a group of public cloud users from the industry, from the public domain. Cloud providers participate in that one. It's also not just Azure, AWS, Google, but you also have big SaaS providers like Salesforce, for example, contributing into this. And they were trying to come up with a way to represent the costs, which you know in Azure is your actuals or amortized consumption. In AWS, it's your cost and usage record. There is a comparable thing for GCP, where the name right now eludes me. These were all proprietary formats. They were high level doing the same thing. They will give you one line per resource per day, in AWS even per hour, and print this into a huge consumption record. Now, everyone used their own naming, their own terminology, and you had different column names for what you were working with. What the focus standard set to achieve is to have one unified set of column names, so that no matter if you're consuming a virtual machine in Azure, in AWS, or in Google, and this is one example among many, you would always be able to identify this as being a virtual machine. you would still be able to figure out that this is an Azure virtual machine belonging to a certain subscription, sitting in a certain resource group, and then having the specification of the Azure virtual machine. So it could be, for example, a generic purpose VM, D4S version 5. Now, the first items should be the same in the other clouds, that this is now coming from a different cloud, sitting in your account, with some other folder structure or something like this in the Google case. And it's still a virtual machine, but in AWS, it would be named, for example, M6.xlarge. So the naming is still different, and the content which is going into the cells is still different between the clouds, but the table structure is aligned. And this is like the first 30 odd columns. Then behind it, there's all the existing columns which were in the past usage files. It's an X underscore and then the classic names of the cloud providers. They weren't able to fit everything into the focus standard. So for example, on Azure, there's the additional information in your cost and usage, which is giving you an explanation of what OS image are you using. Is it, for example, a canonical Ubuntu image? Is it a Windows Server image? How many CPUs are in the VM? This is some extra information which the focus standard did not foresee. And you can still pull this out of these X fields, which are coming together with your focus standard. But now it has become way easier to build your multi-cloud analysis, because you no longer need to harmonize multiple completely different layouts of the same information, your monthly costs. You now only have to correctly interpret and pivot on the numbers and on the different clouds, and then probably do some lookup to say, well, D4 SD5 is kind of an M6X large, is like a comparable thing on Google. So there's still work to be done on that one, but it has become way easier now to build your own multi-cloud analysis tools. And that, from our opinion, has greatly diminished the value which the established FinOps tools brought to the market, because a whole lot of their development went into giving you a one-stop shop to see your cloud costs across Azure, AWS, and Google. Now, Azure, AWS, and Google report into the same data structure, means it's now really worth asking the question if you're going to pay an extra 2.5%, 3%, whatever % of your monthly Azure consumption, if you're only using these tools to get your end-to-end view over the 3 different major cloud providers. If that's the only thing that you're using these tools for, it may be a good idea to start looking into an opportunity to rework this yourself and then get rid of this extra 3% tax on your total cloud consumption, because this is, in my opinion, a very justifiable development project. And based on the standard, it has become way, way easier for your teams to actually develop that. And odds are you can even do this in Excel.
Right, let's move on.
I would like to ask for questions you have around this. Please post them directly so I can answer them during my block. I will hang on for a few more minutes, but I won't be able to stay to the very end of the call. So please don't save your questions for the end. Or if you do and the questions come up late, then I will answer them in the comments. So please feel free then to revert back to this so that you can get the updates.
If you leave your questions on LinkedIn, by the way, where there's a significant number of people watching on LinkedIn right now, then we will see them as comments to this live, and Stefan will be able to see them after the live. But obviously, it's much more fun if you ask them now, and he can respond in real time during the live event. Moving on, so cost counts for virtual machines. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is a new feature which is made available for the credit card users of Azure. So it's a consumer feature at the moment more than an enterprise feature. And what this promises is to give you a better TCO view right in the Azure portal over your virtual machine. So it wants to take into account, right now what you see is the pure cost of the virtual machine and the license if you are using the license included feature, which we heavily recommend against. The subscription licenses, which Sasha showed earlier, are way, way cheaper. So whenever you are using a Windows server on a virtual machine in Azure, consider getting a subscription license for that rather than doing the license included, unless you're really spinning this up for a limited amount of time. As soon as you run this for a month or two, it's cheaper to get a subscription license. It's a rough rule of thumb. So what this aims at is to give you a cost for a virtual machine, including the disks which you're attaching to that. And it may even give you the feature to do an estimate on how much network bandwidth you're going to use. The first 5 gigabytes are free. Everything on top, you have to pay 8 cents per gigabyte if you are pushing data out on the internet, and the lower rate if you are pushing data across VNet peerings or into a different Azure region. So Microsoft was critiqued on only showing part of the costs for a VM, again, especially in the lower end consumer or small business type market who are not under a enterprise agreement or CSP, where the partner would be expected to help the company understand how the prices are actually assembled. So they have now answered this for this specific service, giving you a complete cost view. The thing that we see is that the VM costs were probably the easiest ones to do the TCO analysis of, because you take the VM, you add the 5 disks which you need to attach to the VM, and then you maybe put 5% on top to cover for network traffic and any unexpected things, and then you were there. So the thing I see is Microsoft is now making it easier for people to understand the true cost of a service, which they would see in production when the thing is running in Azure. And this is, in general, a positive trend and a positive development. And I hope they will be doing this with more services, giving you some way of doing an estimation while you are building the solution inside the Azure portal, so that you have a better idea what your final cost impact is, because I still see many companies getting surprised by the true cost once solutions made it all the way into the cloud.
And we have AKS cost inside is the last feature to discuss today around the cloud cost management.
Yeah. So this is again something where I very much welcome the direction Microsoft is going there. And I do hope that they are rolling this out to more solutions which have a shared services nature. So while the consumption overview from Microsoft, I lovingly call it the line-by-line mobile phone bill from hell, because it can have millions of entries per month. And people just mentally switch off if they see an Excel or a CSV file where even Excel says, sorry, you cannot load this, it has too many rows. This is what the FinOps community, the cost management community has to work with, and this often forces the use of tools. By the way, if you search for Excel with more than 1 million lines, there is a service out there on the internet which offers you Excel with up to 1 billion lines. Maybe have a try for that one. It's an online service. It's based on S3, and you can upload 3 gigabytes of data, if I remember right, for free. And then it's like $20 a month for the user license. If you just want to do some Excel evaluation, and the 1 million line cap is something which prevents you from using Excel to analyze your costs, search for that. If you want, I'm happy to put the name there. Or Sasha, can we give the name of the company?
Yes, why not?
Sure, it's Gigasheets.
Gigasheets, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So if you search for Gigasheets, it's basically Excel in a web browser. It does the same pivot, the same filter, the same type of functions. And you can drop, so I tried a gigabyte Excel file with 1.5 million lines, and it just absorbed it and allowed me to do a data analysis on it, and was faster than Excel was. So pretty cool. And yeah, maybe worth going in that. Again, the idea, build your own tool. That's a way to just get all the data from all the clouds, multiple months in there, and then ask it some smart questions. And the investment is far. Yeah.
So they effectively have rolled out a feature that helps you on these clusters split costs between various cost centers. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you for getting me off detention and bringing me back to the topic which we have right here. So what Microsoft has done there is they looked at Kubernetes, and there are 2 different ways to build your Kubernetes environment. We've seen ones there, every application is given its own subscription or is given its own resource group. So then you are forced to deploy 1 cluster of 3 VMs or more per application running. But this is not the most cost-efficient way of running Kubernetes, because the idea of Kubernetes is like the old Windows or like the old web servers, you want to have a farm which runs a lot of applications on top. So put many containers on top, many different things, and have one big cluster which has 500 nodes, because then it's super resilient. Drain a few nodes, do some patching, bring some other things up. The cluster itself is never compromised because it has ample capacity. But then the cluster itself, where you only see the cost per VM per day, becomes very big. And what this solution here addresses is where you have an AKS cluster, which let's say costs $15,000 a month or $150,000 a month, which multiple entities, applications, business units, business entities, if you are a more complex organization, leverages, and you will need to show back costs. At the moment, you would have to do some pretty elaborate scripting to figure out which applications were running, how long, how many pods were up for a given application, and then come up with a distribution key of the costs you see, which is 100 VMs, running anywhere between 50 and 5,000 pods for 5 to 50 applications. Don't know. What Microsoft now is giving you is a distribution key for the costs so that you can associate the costs of the big Kubernetes cluster into the individual components running on that one. So that's especially important if you do showback, and even more so if you're doing chargeback, because it allows you to split basically one line in the Azure cost and usage record into multiple lines to attribute the section of this cost to the individual components it is running. And it's a very, very cool thing if you need that. And what we would love to see Microsoft again is rolling these out. But if you already have a need for doing precise showback and chargeback, then we are happy to help you figure out a way to do this for other big shared type services, SQL databases, data lakes, etc.
Stefan, thanks very much for this update. And if you, as I already said, if you have any questions for Stefan, I wish you would have asked them during the live, but send them to us via email or via LinkedIn. If you're watching us on LinkedIn messages, comment on this live, and we'll respond to them. After that, Stefan, thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.
Hey, a pleasure. Thank you.
And Daryl is back to talk about Microsoft financial year summary. So if you know, you may be aware, if you're around Microsoft, that Microsoft's financial year ends on the 1st of July, actually on the 30th of June. So we can now look back at the Microsoft's financial year 24, and we're already in the year 2025 in Microsoft terms, and see how it affects us. Daryl, it's back to you.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. So basically, this is always a good time during summer to reflect back on the previous year. Again, the previous year, as Sasha pointed out, is Microsoft's fiscal year 24 that ended end of June. And they've basically already kicked off 1st of July, their fiscal year 25. So those of you that are new to the Microsoft business or that have taken on a new role, just be aware of that. It's always good to know from a negotiation perspective when is the correct end of the year, not only for Microsoft, but for any vendor that you're talking to, working with. Their fiscal years are spread over the various periods of the calendar year. So just be aware of that. So why is it important as procurement experts or technical professionals, being Azure professionals or software asset managers or CFOs? Why is it important to reflect back on the Microsoft finances? You might be saying to yourself, I don't deal with Microsoft finances. I don't really care how much they're making, where they're making money. It's not going to make any difference in my life. Well, that is where I want to bring a different viewpoint. If you know how successful Microsoft is or not in specific areas, where their focus is going to be in the coming year, you can gain negotiation leverage. And all I do day in and day out is I negotiate. I negotiate audits, I negotiate enterprise agreements, CSP contracts, MAC agreements, and knowledge is ultimately power. It's all about what you know. The more you know, the better prepared you're going to be. So I'm going to take you from the macro, and then I'm going to pinpoint you on how you can actually use this in your day-to-day interactions with Microsoft, with your negotiations, and with your internal discussions within your organization. So let's start off with a high-level fiscal year. From Microsoft perspective, excellent results. So Microsoft segments their business into 3 categories: intelligent cloud, productivity and business processes, and what they call more personal computing. So let's start off with intelligent cloud. What's included in intelligent cloud is Azure, Windows and SQL Server, GitHub, and some additional products such as AI. So if you're going to ask me as we go through, how well is Microsoft doing with AI, I'm going to tell you there's no actual numbers out there. Microsoft hides the granular information under the intelligent cloud segment. So I'll give you in a minute my almost best guess based on what we are seeing in the market. And that's going to help you with your upcoming FY25 or Microsoft's FY25 discussion. So let's start off with intelligent cloud. Fiscal year revenue, $109 billion. Just to give you some proportion, big number. But what's interesting is that it's a 20% year-on-year growth. Look at the percentage growth. Microsoft's a huge company, so the numbers can get a bit intimidating. The 20% is what's interesting. And from that growth, 30% is Azure. So just keep in mind where the growth is. The growth is Azure, and I'm sure you're all feeling it when you're having discussions with Microsoft. The emphasis is around Azure. It's around consumption. And I want to link back into a bit about what Stefan spoke about, and I like saying overspending or under management of your Azure infrastructure or service. Huge potential from your perspective for optimization. Now, the 30% growth is from new workloads coming in, from increased requirements on database and on bandwidth and on CPU, on core usage and additional services. But the third most underestimated point of growth for Microsoft is waste. Customer waste. We are seeing on average over 30% waste. When I'm saying waste, I'm saying you walk into a room, you switch on the light, and you go on a vacation, and you're still paying the bill. And then your kids come home, and they put on the light, they put on the boiler, they put on the heating, and they leave the house. And your bill is continuously growing, and you're not seeing more value. You haven't added another room to the house. You haven't brought another kid to the world. You just wrongly using Azure or any kind of utility. And Microsoft's capitalizing on it. So part of that 30% growth is your waste. Productivity and business process. It always surprises me that Office is still growing. Office has been growing for the last 30 years plus. And it's still growing as part of the Office 365. So as you can see, 13% growth in total for 365, for LinkedIn and Dynamics. Okay, Dynamics is, we sometimes underestimate it, but it's a pretty huge chunk of their business. Office 365 is still the biggest piece of the productivity and business process bucket. And from that, 14% is commercial 365. And that is coming, a lot of it, again, connecting back to the licensing, to real world, E5, moving from E3 to E5, and continuously adding on additional security components. So now, if you have a look at your Microsoft bill on 365, even if you do have E5, that's not the end of the game. There are so many different add-ons that you are using. That's growing that's helping Microsoft grow. Microsoft doesn't hardly ever audit end customers. So 5, 6, 7 years ago, I'd say, well, a lot of the growth on Office is coming from audits. No, it's coming from actually delivering added value, mostly around security and productivity. And that's impacting Microsoft's bottom line. And you'll see that growth. You'll see the predictions for 25 in a minute, and you'll see where Microsoft is going with this. On personal computing, the good old Windows operating system, OEM, we might have forgotten about OEM. It used to be a big thing, but it's still a big thing for Microsoft from a revenue perspective. It's a cash cow. Okay, don't forget about that. Almost every single a machine that's sold in the market is still sold with a Microsoft Windows OEM license. Don't forget that. Quite a bit of money goes into there. You've got, in addition to the Windows in the more personal computing segment, you've got Xbox, you've got search and news advertising. $76 billion worth of revenue still coming in there. Again, there's no breakdown, but from my experience, and I've been around Microsoft for a few years, the majority there is still Windows operating system. So still a cash cow for Microsoft, still a very, very lucrative business. 14% growth, not bad. Although 61% is growth in Xbox and content, again, the majority of the revenue is still coming in from the operating system. Can we move forward, please, Sasha? Okay, so from a stock perspective, and that's ultimately what investors care about, nothing else. 25% growth on the stock price. Huge. So in FY23, 12 months ago, the stock was at $320. Today it's at $399, or it was at $399. I didn't check what it is exactly today, but when the reports were released, and the dividend per share has grown by 10%. One of the highest dividends paid out from a blue tech company. Okay, this is not a startup, but still, the overall revenue is huge. The growth is substantial, and it's continuously growing. So those of you out there, I'm not a consultant when it comes to financial investments. Microsoft's still quite a solid investment. If you're looking for a solid investment, and I'm looking back many years, they're still doing really well from that perspective. What does it mean from you? It means for you. It means that Microsoft is making money. And you know what? That's a good thing. It's a good thing because that means they can reinvest in R&D. They can provide better products, and they do provide good products. Even though we are so-called on the other side of the negotiation table from Microsoft, and we represent our customers, we are very much aware of where Microsoft puts its dollars. And if you understand where they put the dollars, you can pull the right levers when you negotiate. So Microsoft's doing well. But what does this mean? Is that they need to continue doing well. They need to continue to overperform. And to overperform year on year on year is difficult. It means increased pressure on the accounting. means increased pressure on your accounting, means that they have got double-digit growth metrics on your account, on your specific account. As small as it might seem to the billions of dollars of revenue, for that specific account rep that you're dealing with, and this is the micro side of translating the bigger picture into what it actually means for you, is that they are out there looking for double-digit growth. They're under huge pressure. That means that you've still got leverage. And don't forget that. Regardless of the size of Microsoft, regardless of your size compared to Microsoft, you are still important to them. And you're still important to that specific account rep and to that accounting and to that geography. Keep that in mind. Let's move on, please. So let's look at the total numbers. Always nice to see. Pretty big, 245 billion, not a bad revenue. Outcome, 16% year-on-year growth, meaning, again, going back to what it means to you, you are going to see the pressure coming in from their account reps. Again, they need to keep up this double-digit numbers, because if they don't bring the double-digit numbers, the stock price is going to drop, and investors aren't going to be happy. That's always something you need to keep in mind when you're looking at the stock exchange. Operating income still very high, 109 billion, 24% increase year over year. That means that they are managing their business really well. Again, what does it mean to you? It means that you're working with a company that knows how to run a business. Okay? They're not wasting money. They are making money, and they're still putting back in R&D. Less than they should, more than they should. They've still got a very good business. So when you are investing your future of your business on Microsoft or on any company, it's really important to understand how stable they are. Because you don't want to bet your business on a company that is losing money or operating income is dropping. You want a stable partner. Microsoft is stable, making a lot of money, operating income is up, net income is up by 22%, diluted earnings 11.8, 22% up, and dividend. Pretty important stuff again when you're looking at the overall health of the company is healthy. That means from your perspective, yes, continue investing in Microsoft technology, but keep in mind that you can still negotiate. It doesn't mean you have to pay any price they ask from you, or the list price. The bigger you are, or the more sophisticated you are in presenting your business to your account team, the better results you're going to have. Sasha, please. So let's look at the outlook for FY25, and I want to leave some time open for Q&A in general, either to myself or to Sasha, and Stefan's jumped off, but we can take those questions later. So revenue growth, the expected revenue growth, this is not my estimate, as I said. I'm not a financial analyst, but there are some really smart people out there that I follow, and the average outlook is 12 to 15% year-on-year growth. And again, where's it going to come from? Going to come from cloud and AI segments. So this is, again, pretty huge. As I said, double-digit growth. They're going to come hard at you this year, the Microsoft team. They're going to double down on Azure. They're going to triple down on AI. That's important to them. Leverage it. Don't just give it away. Leverage it for the basic stuff that you're still using. Leverage it on your Office 365 expenditure. Leverage it on your unified support contract. And by the way, I think in 3 weeks' time, if I'm not mistaken, I've got a live audio event. Check it out on LinkedIn about unified support. So everything connects back. It's just a web of various components that just all connect back. So you need to again, if you are looking at the overall bigger picture, you need to look at unified support. You need to look at your EA, at your Mac, at your CSP account, everything that's going on there. That's huge.
Daryl,
EPS.
just because you
Yeah.
mentioned the live, it's in 2 weeks. So what's that? 20? Is it 3 weeks? 28th of August.
3 weeks,
I'll
I
check
think.
it. I'll
Beginning
check
of
it. I'll
September.
announce it. Yeah.
Yeah. Earnings per share, EPS, again, double-digit growth, 15 to 18%. Some of the key initiatives that you should look for: AI integration. So Microsoft's going to go really, really double down on integrating AI into Dynamics, into Office, of course, into the ecosystem. They are tightening the loose ends, basically moving off the Microsoft platform very, very challenging. What else? Potential risk. So let's just talk about potential risks in a second. So basically, what we're looking at is competition, and I think competition is going to be more in the world of security. Again, we all saw what happened a few weeks ago. Actually, played really nice into Microsoft hands. But again, security is still a very, very big potential risk for Microsoft. Uh, Governmental, EU, regulatory challenges in general have always been a challenge for Microsoft. But I think most of the pressure is actually not on Microsoft these days. Is still is a lot on Google's practices on the browser side. Microsoft is challenged, but I think it's a very low risk. Not much for you to leverage in that perspective. Maybe if you are more on a cloud service provider and you're on the other side and you're a bit competing with Microsoft, that has an effect on you. Actually, has a positive effect on you because somebody's out there looking after your best interests. Let's go to, I think, I'm taking the last slide that we have in the deck, Sasha, and then we can pause and open for some questions. Sorry, 2 more slides quickly on acquisitions. Just keep in mind some of the most predominant acquisitions. So one huge in gaming and entertainment, Activision, 68.7 billion. Again, Microsoft is doubling down on Xbox and on services on gaming. Nuance Communications, AI Healthcare, again, substantial, almost 20 billion, and a small acquisition around advertising technology, 1 billion. Some projections, again, high level, just what these are my thoughts. So we might just see some kind of spin-off purchase of Mandiant, of cybersecurity. Again, if not them, could be somebody in the same areas. Discord, again, potential. Again, maybe someone in the same area of expertise. And I'm sure there are going to be some big surprises as well. Microsoft's always in there for surprises. So I look forward to that. Sasha, what else do we have? Okay. So let's just, again, quick summary. Very strong performance in 24. I think Microsoft, again, this is my personal opinion now. Microsoft is going to have a tough year in FY25. Not because I feel sorry for them or they've got huge problems. It's just really, really tough keeping up the growth expectations. Sorry. Huge expectations. Double digit, 12 to 15%. That's what the market is looking for. Increased pressure on the entire Microsoft board all the way up from the top down. You'll see it coming ground level. We're going to see some strategic acquisitions. They need some strategic acquisitions to continue the growth of the business and the health of the business. They will need to go through some major acquisitions around AI, gaming potentially, and of course around, in my opinion, around security. Healthcare advertising, we'll see that as well. But I think security is going to be, AI and security are going to be the two big things. And again, Azure, huge growth potential for Microsoft and for you. And I want to emphasize this. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in Azure that you can optimize. I think your main objective going into, well, FY25 or H2 of your year, or planning for fiscal year or calendar year of 25 is you're going to have Azure growth. Huge 25, 35, 40% growth. You can actually keep your expenditure flat. You can grow your Azure usage and keep your spend flat. I know it sounds crazy. So, and it's not science fiction, and it's not a missile technology. This is down to earth, good old fashioned management. You need to start managing your Azure assets because you're bleeding. You need to watch out for Azure Marketplace. Azure Marketplace has become a almost gray area of spend. CFOs are cursing. We have conversations with CFOs that have lost control on their spend. Marketplace is like a dark black hole. Money goes in, and it goes in, and it goes in, and there's lack of control, lack of procurement control, just lack of good old-fashioned best practice governance. We've seen removal of teams from Microsoft 365 for certain. It's going to impact certain customers, not all customers. We can get into that in a minute. Around the EA customers that are continuing with their current software assurance or with the current subscriptions are not going to be impacted, but all new net purchases, there's going to be an increase. New Copilot versions coming out all the time. Dynamic 365 price increase. If you haven't seen my post about that, jump into my LinkedIn, have a look, read that. Some huge price increases. I don't spend any more time on that today. And of course, look out for new products that are going to be released. I don't spend any time on this, but this is basically just a nice summary. Go to my LinkedIn page, find this if you into Dynamic 365. Double-digit price increases down the board, going to hit you in October. Be aware, be ready, prepare. Thank you. Back to you, Sasha.
Daryl, I have one question to you, and this is purely speculation because you're not a financial advisor. I'm not a financial advisor, but just looking at what's going on, I've been monitoring financial advisor news for a while around blue chip companies, and mostly these days I'm talking about IT. So, for example, Oracle, Microsoft. And in my head, I may be wrong there, so correct me if I'm wrong. In my head, there's a magical number of the year-on-year, I'm not talking about revenue, year-on-year kind of net income growth, which is 20%. And Microsoft this year had some, last financial year, had some fantastic spikes, up to 30% growth in a month. And the outlook, firstly, you already said that it'll be pretty hard to maintain it. And it's just looking at them right now, never underestimate their ability to deliver. But looking at them right now, it's very hard to say whether they can pull any ace from up their sleeve and maintain that massive momentum. It's huge momentum, and they've been, by the way, maintaining this for 3 years. So in 3 years, the growth, what was that? 58% on the share price. It's huge. By the way, it's my only share that I myself invest in as a single share, because just for fun. I usually don't do that because, again, not a financial person. So looking at what they do right now with the charging for add-ons, charging for so almost making Teams commercial, not bundled, commercial. Teams Premium, there's no E7 on the horizon, although we've been predicting it for 2 years. And also assuming that audits are almost somewhere in the background. They're still going, but they're in the background because audits for Microsoft are right now not a compliance thing. It's a revenue stream. If Microsoft slows down, they will be looking for new ways to increase revenue. What do you think? What do they have? What is your just pure speculation? You're allowed to speculate.
I think we're going to see growth. There are two types of growth that I can expect. One is around security. That's going to grow the E5 market share. So the Office 365 package is still a huge component of the Microsoft growth. We saw that 14, 15%. It's still going to grow, and it's going to grow through additional security enhancements. That's my own opinion. And it's going to go and it's going to go through not only that, AI. Okay, we all saw the price of Copilot. It's enormous. It's a premium price on top of almost the same price as buying an E3 license. That's going to continue to grow and to push Microsoft's growth. And we're going to see a lot around AI. New components, new bundles, it's going to come out. I've got no doubt about it. That's one huge growth engine. I think the second growth engine, and I'm going to be again blunt, is pure bad management by enterprise organizations. And I'm sorry that I'm blunt, because I deal with this on a daily basis. And when I'm talking about waste, Microsoft is building on the fact that organizations do not know how to manage, because there are not that they want to undermanage or wrongly manage their infrastructure. The tools are just not mature. Practices are just not out there. Governance is not enough. And I don't think that there's enough knowledge in the market to actually manage these huge, huge multi-million-dollar Azure infrastructures. We deal with customers that are spending tens of millions, if not more, dollars, euros per month on their Azure spend. I'm not even talking about AWS and GCP. Okay? To manage that, it's not like managing an old-fashioned data center and everything that you procure under that or on top of that. It requires a whole different set of tools and a whole different management infrastructure. And when you have engineers doing whatever they want in the organization, setting up whatever machines they want for 99.999999 redundancy when they only need 99.885, that is hundreds of thousands of dollars per month savings. So yes, Microsoft is sitting back. Well, they're not sitting back. They are a very aggressive company. But they know that the waste is there. They know that that waste is going to grow. So if the waste is here, it's going to be here. So if you want to be proactive and not be part of that easy growth, you need to take control. And it's not easy. But that's up to you. So that's where Microsoft's going to see growth. And that's where I think end customers or your biggest opportunity for savings is around better management of your Azure, GCP, AWS consumption.
We have a comment in that regard. The growth will be about 20-25%, maybe.
Well,
honestly, I hope so. So
for Microsoft's sake, and for the market, I don't think it's a bad thing, as long as you are controlling your budget. So if Microsoft grows by 20%, I would buy some more stock of Microsoft. I don't hold Microsoft stock just so there's no conflict of interest, because we are on the other side of the business. So that's just my personal take on that. So I haven't made money on Microsoft in many, many years, maybe stupidity, but just that's my own take on that. But I agree. Microsoft's still in a very strong position. I think they're in a better position than IBM, Oracle, all the old school blue chip companies. I think they're in a better position than AWS, by the way. I haven't looked at competitive analysis between them and AWS in a while, but from a holistic view of what they're offering in the market, I think Microsoft's in a much better position even than AWS these days. So I'm going to pause. We've come to the top of the hour. Sasha, you want to add in anything?
I want to answer this question. If there's a customer that has an Azure subscription through CSP and their own development subscription through Microsoft directly, whether they have a chance to place a support ticket with Microsoft, I could speculate about it, but there are contractual requirements. CSP subscriptions must be supported by the tier 1 CSP in the chain. If they are indirect through tier 2, the client needs to open it. The tier 2 partner can help them open a ticket with the tier 1 CSP partner. They can then, if they have a so-called partner support, they can then channel it to Microsoft. But the first line of support for them is tier 1. If it's a subscription bought from Microsoft, I would assume, common logic, honestly, never looked into that, but I would assume a direct subscription with Microsoft should be supported by Microsoft. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's what we know. That these are the contractual requirements. Everyone, thank you very much for being with us today. It was a long live event for us. We haven't done an hour-long events for quite a while. And we hope you'll join us in the coming months. We always have a Q&A session every first Wednesday of the month. In addition to that, on our private profiles, on my profile, on Daryl's profile on LinkedIn, we also hold audio events almost weekly on various topics related to Microsoft negotiations, cost management, cloud. We're going to introduce more Azure-related, cost management-related lives in 2025. On my channel, I talk a lot about service providers and licensing for infrastructure as a service, software as a service, how to manage it in the best way. We did a series of lives and now we put them on pause, but you can watch recordings on YouTube and listen on our podcasts about Microsoft compliance audits, especially for service providers. So if you're new to our channels and if you survived until this point, we would love you to subscribe to our channels and just, learn from what we share. Thank you again and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.